today's bell ringer, what we focused on was just some basic things that you need for this week. Again, multiplying by a fraction by a whole number. Remember, there's two options. One option is to leave it as it is, send the whole number to the top, which 10 times 2 becomes 20. Leave the 5 alone. Just be sure that you're working on reducing those, because again, what some of you are got lost last week was that you just left it as 20 over 5, but 20 divided by 5 is actually 4. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other way to do it was to make sure that you went ahead and turned 10 into a fraction by putting 10 over 1. But notice that you still get 20 on top, you still get 5 on the bottom. Your answer will still be the same no matter what. When you go to add a whole number to a fraction, remember that the first thing you want to do is turn this whole number into a fraction. Then we go through the process that we started discussing, which is, if you're not good with adding fractions, if you haven't gotten used to it, then there's a last effort you could do, which is multiply the two denominators for your common denominator. Send this value up here, send this value up here diagonally. 5 times 3 becomes 15, 7 times 1 becomes 7, and then 15 plus 7 becomes 22 over 3, which is good enough for what we're doing right now. But again, multiply for your common denominator, send this value up to that one, send this value up to that one, and that sets you up at least to where you need to be. On the next one, again, just kind of getting you ready for some of the things coming up. Don't forget, whenever you have this, that we use the opposite of plus 5 first, which is minus 5. We bring down 2x and 6. That's 2 times x. So what we do now is divide by 2, getting x equals 3. And then on the last one, looking at like terms, you have 2x and negative 4x. So 2 minus 4. Again, when looking at positive 2, negative 4, that would end up being negative 2 because there are 2 more negatives than positives. Don't forget your attachment. Then you put 3y with 5y, which is a negative 3 and a negative 5. Not forgetting that since both of those are the same, that you put them together to make negative 8. So again, keeping those things in mind, making sure that you're still working on those skill sets, because they are going to be eventually tested and necessary. Today we're talking about the distributive property and just reviewing the general steps of it, and introducing the process of incorporating fractions. Again, just looking at some basic distributive property problems. If you're having issues with this, make sure you email me. Again, you're probably at home, but even if you're not at home, feel free to talk to me in person, whatever it is. But just make sure you take care of this, because all this was taught last semester. And so what I'm going to do is just talk through it, go over it, and then move on to what the new stuff is. But remember that we're supposed to take the outside value and send it to both. So 4 times 7x is 28x. Use your multiplication table if you have to. 4 times 5 is positive 20. And so that is what you end up with, is 28x plus 20. Keep in mind, you can't put those two things together because they're not like terms. That has an x on it, that does not, can't combine them. Then when you see this, again, negative 6 is your outside number, so negative 6 times 9 is negative 54x, because a negative times a positive is negative. Then negative 6 meets negative 8, making a positive 48. Again, because a negative times a negative is positive. Keeping in mind, again, you do not put these two things together. That's as far as it goes. On this one, it's the only thing they do is they put the outside value in the back, but you can still do this. 7 meets 5x, making 35x. And 7 meets negative 3 to make negative 21. So it doesn't matter where that number is. It could be in the front or the back. Just make sure that you are aware that you understand how to do those things. So make sure you get practice. And then the last thing is negative 3 meets 4x to make negative 12x. And negative 3 meets 6 to make negative 18. Again, negative times a positive is negative. Negative times a positive is negative. And that is what you want to put down. So the purpose of those four, again, that wasn't a lesson because it's been covered, I think, 2 times already, and plus all the review that we did. So if you're having issues understanding that, please talk to me. I do have videos where I discuss the process. But again, you got to make sure you reach out, because this is the 3rd time we're seeing it. And I'm just kind of working through it, assuming that you're trying to get better, or that you have been trying to get better. So the good part about repeating information throughout the year is that it does allow you to continue growing. Hopefully you either understood the process we just did, Or again, you understand how to get help, which is to talk to me. Email me, rbradley, sps186.org. In our next phase this quarter, we're going to be looking at how fractions change the distributive property. But before doing that, again, let's make sure we have the fraction to whole number transition down, which is take the whole number to the top. 6 times 3, 18. 4 stays there. Make sure you're practicing your reduction or you're simplifying. 18 and 4 are both even, so we can cut them both in half. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 4 divided by 2 is 2. These two can't be simplified anymore, so you've got it. Simplify. 8 over 5, 6. Again, even if that number is in the back or the front, doesn't matter. Send the whole number to the top. 8 times 5 is 40. Leave the 6 alone. 40 and 6 are both even, so you cut them in half. 40 becomes 20. 6 becomes 3. That's as far as you can go. So remember that this has to be done in the scratch, or should be done in the scratch area, to keep you from making problems more confusing. So let's look at this real quick in terms of what we're checking out. So keeping the foundation of our distributive property together with what we're doing, we know we're going to do 1/3 times 6. So what I would do is put 1/3 times 6 off to the side. I would send my 6 to the top, making it 6 over 3. 6 over 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, making this 2. That's the first part. Then I'm going to do 1/3 times 8x. So 1/3 times 8. I don't need the x, I just need the 8. Send the 8 to the top, which is going to be 8 over 3. Those two numbers don't combine, so you have to keep your thoughts in mind. This is a positive 1/3, positive 8x, so it's plus 8 over 3, and don't forget that the x goes with it. So that would be your answer. So this is where the first week of us talking about fractions comes into play, because you want to make sure you have your fraction stuff at least decently understood so that doesn't confuse you. But that's it. That's all you have to do. This is simplified, that's simplified, everything's been multiplied by 1/3, so you are done. So the only thing you have to get used to is the fact that these might just be some ugly answers. So again, 2/5 times 6x, all we care about is the 2/5 and the 6, so do that. Send the 6 up to the top the way we've been trained, to be 12 over 5. That doesn't simplify, so we're going to put 12 over 5, and don't forget that the x goes with it. Then 2/5 meets negative 10. Again, all I really care about is the 10, so we're going to go ahead and do that. 10 goes up to here to make 20 over 5, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. So what we end up with is, because this is a positive times a negative 4 being attached to that. So again, that is where we are going with all this stuff that we need to see. All right. And then one more new type of problem you're going to see this week on the test is one where the fraction is behind it. But again, the fraction being behind or in front doesn't really matter. You're doing negative 1/2 meeting 9. So again, I don't care about the sign. I can do that on my own. 1/2 meets 9. 9 goes up to the top, making 9 over 2. 9 over 2 is as far as it goes. We just need to understand that a positive times a negative is negative 9 over 2, and there's no variable. So now negative 1/2 meets 10. So again, I'll go off to the side, making 1/2 meet 10. 10 goes up to meet the 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this is a positive times a negative, so it'd be minus 5. And don't forget your x should come down with it. That's really all there is to it. Again, that represents the questions you'll be expected of on your test this week. In terms of the distributive stuff, so like I said, there's 3 new problems we've got to see. So if you are paying attention and trying to stay on track of all that stuff, you got the 9 questions from last week plus the 3 more so far from this week. Just again, make sure you're doing your best to practice everything, get better over the next few days. Our system is shifting slightly, so now you will actually have more time to practice and ask questions. But again, if you're not working to learn the material, the extra time doesn't matter. So let me know if I can help you with anything. Again, the best advice for you on this is to pause the video, even if I forget to pause the video or give you time to pause the video, but to pause the video and do whatever is in the screen and then resume it to see if you're getting it right. But like I said, this is just pretty much this worksheet has a whole lot of your test questions in it. So it's got stuff from today, and then it's got other things that you're going to need from last week, so you can make sure you're practicing for the test. So just make sure you make the most of it, but I'm just going to walk through this very briefly and go from there. So number 1, 6 meets 3x to make 18x. 6 meets 2 to make 12. On number 2, 5 meets 4x to make 20x. 5 meets negative 7 to make negative 35. Now number 3 is tricky, so you might want to make sure you pay attention to this. All this is a negative, which means the opposite of. So opposite of 9x would be negative 9x. Opposite of negative 3 would be plus 3. So that's all it is you're just distributing that negative, which means switch the sign of everything on the inside. These 3 problems are on your test. My advice, again, for those of you who are trying to survive, make sure you focus on these, because all 3 of these have really no tricks, no fractions, really nothing that difficult outside of making sure you look at your multiplication table and don't do anything crazy when you're multiplying or do anything to make an error. Number 4 is where things get interesting, where now you have 1/2 times 12. 12 goes up to the 1, making 12 over 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6, so that's actually 6. 1/2 times 14x, so 1/2 times 14. 14 goes up, making 14 over 2. And 14 divided by 2 is 7, so plus, because it's going to be positive, 7x. Or as you're getting better, 1/2 of 12 is 6, plus 1/2 of 14x is 7x. If you get used to that, feel free to use that. But again, the general process is, if you don't know what it is, take it off to the side, do the work, and then bring it back. And it's helpful because there are problems where you actually have a fraction to deal with. So in this case, 3/4 times 14. Well, I don't know what 14 times 3 is. So what I'm going to do is go off to the side and figure it out. That's 12, carry the 1, 42. So 42 over 4. What I notice about 42 and 4 is that both of them are even, so they can be cut in half, making 21 over 2. I think that's as far as you can go, so that's going to be 21 over 2. 3/4 meeting 12. Let's see what we got. 12 goes up to meet the 3. 12 times 3, again, if you don't know what it is, multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. That would be 36. So we end up with 36 over 4. 36 divided by 4, actually, if you don't see it, they can both be cut in half, is 18 over 2. But 18 divided by 2 is just 9. So plus 9. X is what you're looking for on that. Number 6. This is the one with the negative 1/2, where you will simply say 1/2 times 15. 15 meets that, which makes 15 over 2. That's as far as we can go. Just remember it's going to be negative 15 over 2 because that's a negative times a positive. As you're starting to get used to this algebra, as you're getting deeper into the algebra, you've got to make sure you keep applying the rules. Here we go. We're negative 1/2 meets 14, or 1/2 of 14, which some of you know what half of 14 is. If not, you're doing 14 times 1/2. Again, 14 goes up to the top, making 14 over 2. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that would be a negative 7 with an x, because that x is there. It's negative because it's a positive times a negative. Again, using this for scratch work to get your number, using your common sense and your algebra training to get everything else, that's where everything starts to get pieced together. Now, it seems tough at first, but the more you do it, the more you practice, and the better you get at it, the easier algebra will be. You just have to, again, make sure that you're working to understand those rules. 7, 8, and 9. This is from last week, so hopefully you're reviewing this, because again, all those questions from last week are going to be on this week's quiz. Addition and subtraction are the same level, so you do 9 minus 5 first. A mistake that I saw was people who kept jumping over there. You cannot skip something just to go over there because you want to add first. You're going to miss it. It doesn't work. Please stop doing it. Also, make sure you're practicing showing all the steps, because remember that this is worth 2 points. 24 divided by 6 times 4. Again, that's not a parentheses, that's a times. Because multiplication and division are on the same level, you'll divide first, getting 4 times 4. Now you do your multiplication, which is 16. If you're having an issue figuring out how to do division, make sure again that you talk to me. Let me know so I can try to help you out. You have to remember that I'm assuming that since a lot of these skills that we're using right now, the basic skills that you've been learning since about 3rd grade, I have to assume you either learned them or have them in your head. So if you don't know, you have to tell me, because you're now in 9th grade, which is 6 years beyond when a lot of this stuff was being used. So just because I'm not going to the level to where I'm breaking down everything, showing how to do division and all that, it's because I assume you already know. So if you don't know, say something so I can help you. Keeping in mind number 9 is just like 7 and 8. Here's your multiplication, division. There's your addition, subtraction. So again, you will start with your division because it's in front. Copy your 16. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Copy the rest of that. Do your multiplication because multiplication is again stronger than addition, subtraction. You have to do the subtraction first. 16 minus 8 is 8. And then 8 plus 4 is 12. So outside of that, that's what we're looking at. All right. Number 10, 2 times 9 minus 3 squared divided by 2. Again, in this situation, you do the parentheses first. So this goes first. 2 parentheses 6 squared divided by 2. Next, we always do the exponent. 6 squared means 6 times 6, which is 36. Next, we have to do 2 times 36, which again, if you don't know, go off to the side. And again, I'm working these out as if you know how to do that, because you should know long multiplication. If you don't, talk to me. And then 72 divided by 2. 2 goes into 7 3 times. 2 goes into 12 6 times, giving us the answer of 36. And if you understand at least a little bit about 10, you should at least be able to get 2 points on 11, because remember that the first point you're going to get is by doing the parentheses first. So copy the 1/2. Change that into 2, copy the squared, and go from there. The next thing you know you're supposed to do is the exponent, and the fraction hasn't even come into play yet. So what I'm telling you is, when you take this test at the end of the week, make sure, especially if you're practicing this, that you get 2 points on that, because those 2 steps don't even involve a fraction. But now we do 1/2 times 4. So again, if you don't know what 1/2 times 4 is, go off to the side. Don't forget to reduce it. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So again, that's where we are in terms of what that stuff is doing. Number 12, I guess 12, 13, and 14 we'll put in here. So number 12, again, first thing you want to do is put your 3 there. But please make sure you work on doing your expansions. Take your time, write that out, and expand it. This means put 3 3s off to the side, and all you do is order of operations. 3 times 3 is 9 times 3. I'm sorry, 3 times 3 is 9. Copy your times 3. 9 times 3 is 27. Now we do 27 times 4. 7 times 4 being 28. 8, 9, 10, making 108. And that is what you're looking at. 13, again, as we continue to see these things and get to practice, assuming you know how to substitute, which if you don't, you really did not catch on to last week and you got some work to do. But assuming that you know how to substitute, make sure you keep remembering that when you square a negative, it will always end up being a positive. All right, because it's -6 times -6, and a negative times a negative is positive. Now we do 5 times 36, 30, 18. And then from there, 180 minus 4 is 176. Again, as I keep going forward on things that I've covered a bunch of times, I'm going to move a little bit faster because you've seen it, you've had a chance to ask. You just have to make sure you ask. And then here, substituting 39 minus 6 times 8 makes 39 minus 48. If you don't know what that is, just remember that whenever these two things are opposites that you're subtracting, so you can literally come over here and do 48 minus 39, which is a good idea for those of you, or count up from 39 to get to 48. But can't do 8 minus 9. 18 minus 9 is 9, so it ends up being negative 9 as you're going through that. But again, even if you just substitute and do the multiplication part like you're supposed to, you get 2 out of 3 points, which is a good spot to be. 15. This ends up being 4 plus 1/2 times 7/5. That multiplication goes first. 1/2 times 7/5 is 7 over 10. So it ends up being 4 plus 7 over 10. From there, again, I need to turn 4 into a fraction. Multiply the two denominators. That goes up here. This goes up here. That ends up being 40. This ends up being 7. 47 over 10 ends up being my final answer there. So again, just kind of getting that down and making sure we're okay where that's going. Not so much worried about the solvings. I will go down to number 19, which is your a review on the slope thing. Keeping in mind, this eventually will come back into play, that x is first and y is second. And when we talked about this, we talked about that being the first point and the second point, which means that this will be x1 and y1 because those are both x and y on the first point, but that's x2 and y2 because those are both x on the second point. So when they say which y2, it means go to the second point and which y. When they say which y1, which is what that subscript means, again, that's not a superscript, which is an exponent, it's a subscript. Y1 means the first y, which in this case would be 8. X2 means the second point's x, which is in the first spot, 10. X1 means the first spot's x, which is in the first place, 6. What we learned when we covered this last quarter was that you just simply plug it into the slope formula. So y2, which is 12, minus y1, which is 8, over x2, which is 10, minus x1, which is 6. Just like we learned in our order of operations, deal with the top and bottom individually. So 12 minus 8 is 4, 10 minus 6 is 4, and then simplify. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So again, make sure you make the most out of this stuff. Talk to me if you need it. As I said, as we keep going forward, you all are separating each other from yourselves, and what's happening is you have people who are trying to get better who are actually getting better, because the more you practice this stuff, the better you're going to get. And then you have people who are kind of either feeling sorry for themselves or waiting for some sort of a miracle. It's not going to happen. You have to put in the work. So make sure you're doing what's necessary. Communicate with me when you need to. I'll talk to you all later. Good luck.